Good afternoon, YouTubers of the universe. It is July 18th, 2020, and welcome to the Bubba Continuum. I wanted to put up a video and announce that I changed the name of my channel. I started out as Chips O'Toole, and I thought that was kind of funny because it was a reference from the movie, or a reference to the movie Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. If you haven't seen that scene in the movie, then you won't understand what I'm talking about, and you just think it's dumb. But you know, tools make chips. So Chips O'Toole struck me as an amusing thing to call myself. And then I thought, well, that's not very original. You're taking a name somebody else made up. And then I decided, well, I'll call myself Heaven on Wheels, because I got this workshop that I love. And you know, when you love working with tools, your workshop is a little bit like heaven. I'm putting everything on wheels because I've been welding up all these mobile bases to put things on so I can roll them around. And I thought, well, Heaven on Wheels. And I thought, that's original, because no one else, I'd never seen anybody else use the phrase Heaven on Wheels before, so it wasn't as though I stole it from somebody. But people come up with the same thought independently, and I found out there was another channel, well, there's several channels called Heaven on Wheels, and one of them is by some lady who, if I had to guess, I would say is from the San Francisco area, who roller skates a lot. And probably not a person I have a lot in common with. So I thought I really need to get a better title for this channel, a better name. And I thought, well, I'll call it Bubbacious or Bubbification or something like that, because a Bubba is a person who uses tools poorly. And while I don't think I qualify for total Bubba status, I do make a lot of mistakes. I've got a lot of tools, but I'm not the most skilled person on earth. I give it the old college try. So I thought that would be a funny thing to call the channel. If you've ever seen Star Trek, you know who Q is, and you know about the Q continuum. And I thought, well, if there's a Q continuum, there ought to be a Bubba continuum. So welcome to the Bubba continuum. Join in. If you break things and burn things, you end up paying people to fix stuff because you can't do it. If you're embarrassed for people to see your projects, this is the place for you. So I don't know if I qualify as a true Bubba. You know, a Bubba is a guy who, before he gets in the car to go anywhere, always removes his shirt. And when he does wear a shirt, he always tears the sleeves off first. That's a Bubba. I mean, duct tape fixes everything. You know, that's the kind of guy. He uses a chainsaw instead of a table saw. So I don't know if I qualify as a total Bubba. I am a Southerner. I was born in Kentucky, but I spent most of my life in Miami, unfortunately. It was a horrible place. Now I'm back in the South. I like to think of myself as a born-again Southerner, but I spent a lot of time in Kentucky, but I wasn't really raised there. And I have a couple of college degrees, and I have all my own teeth, except actually I have one over here. I have a crown that's pretty much most of the tooth has been replaced. And that's because I used that tooth to open beer bottles when I was in college. And I thought I got away with it for like, I don't know, 35 years. And then one day I was eating a Snickers bar and I noticed there was nothing there. So these things catch up with you. So I'm not a total Bubba, you know. I don't have a Confederate flag tattooed anywhere on my body, but I do make a mess with tools, and I live in the South, and I make unbelievable biscuits and gravy, so I feel like I qualify. So what else did I want to talk about today? I'm building a shooting platform because I went to take a long-range shooting class, and they taught me how to shoot prone, which is great because when you shoot prone, it seems like the scope doesn't move around as much, the gun doesn't move around as much, it's easier to stay on target, and recoil just really doesn't bother you when you're prone. You would think it would, because you're held in place by your fat, you know, and you would think that would make you a nice sturdy surface for the rifle to butt up against, and it would cause more problems. But in reality, it's much nicer. So it's a good skill to have. You ought to be able to shoot prone. And now I kind of prefer it. But I tried it out in the pasture, which is where I shoot, and it wasn't the most pleasant experience on earth. I had to put down a tarp on top of the cow manure, and then I had to put my shooting mat down on top of the tarp, and I was way down on the ground. You know, one of the big problems with this is things will pop up between you and the target. Anything that's over a foot high is going to be in your scope. And I would lie down, and then I'd see a weed in my scope doing this. And you can't tell which weed it is. You know, when you get up and look around the scope, you don't know which one of those weeds is in your way. So you have to walk back and forth between the target and your scope, pulling weeds up, trying to figure out which one is the problem. And it seems like heat mirage is stronger near the ground. I guess that makes sense because there's no heat mirage up in the sky. So I said I'll build a platform, And I got myself some 4x4s that are pressure treated, and I got 2x4s that are pressure treated, and I got a bunch of various types of screws that can be drilled in with an impact driver. And I got a sheet of plywood. I was not able to get marine plywood or well, I don't know if there is such a thing as pressure treated plywood. I was not able to get it, I'll put it that way. They certainly don't have these things here. I wanted something that would be resistant to moisture damage. So I got what I could at Home Depot, only the finest. And I've been putting it together for the past week or so, and it's been a real pain in the butt. First of all, it's not that easy to put together a 400-pound thing that's 6 feet high with no help. Nobody likes me enough to help me. Can you imagine that? And the other thing is, I'm trying to make it fairly decent. I don't want it to be a total Bubba project. So I've been painting it. And when you paint stuff, you dramatically increase the time it takes. I mean, a real Bubba would get some nails that didn't match and some wood from behind the shed, and he'd throw something together, and 20 minutes later, he'd be shooting, and his beer would be on the corner of the platform, and everything would be great. Of course, it would fall apart 2 years later, and it would be a disgrace. But he'd get it done. Since I'm trying to do things more or less right, it's not working out that way for me. Like the platform has to be painted because it's not treated to resist rot or moisture or anything like that. So I decided to paint it with Rust-Oleum farm implement paint, which is really tough. It's this oil-based paint, which is very strong. Well, in order to do that, I had to prime it. So every time you put a coat of anything on the wood, you gotta wait a day before you can put anything else on it. It's not like latex paint that dries 20 minutes later, which Bubba would have used, a real Bubba. Except a real Bubba would use the $3 can of Krylon from Home Depot. That's really what he would do. And then the paint would peel off a week later, and every time it peeled off, he'd just spray it again. And then, every time he got up from shooting, there'd be flakes of paint all over him. So I sanded this thing down to get the splinters off of it, and I put primer on it, and then the next day I put paint on it, and now it's dried out again, and I've got to sand it again, because when I sanded it the first time around, I got rid of most of the stuff on it, but it's just not the greatest plywood on earth, so whenever you do anything to it, little things start sticking up out of it. So my theory was that once I put the paint on it, that would prevent future things from sticking up, and whatever things were still sticking up when the paint went on, I could sand them off, and then I'd give it the final coat, and it'd be fairly slick. I hope that works out to be true. So that's what I'm doing. It's going to be 8 feet long, 4 feet wide, obviously, because it's a sheet of plywood, and it's 19 inches off the ground, and it's going to have a 6x10 galvanized roof, and I'm really hoping to get that together. And of course, I'll put pictures on the video. We'll see how it works. I've got it so far. I've just got the frame built. I built it so it slopes downward toward the back. You can't tell that in the picture. And I'm hoping the rain will pour off of me. There's no shade out there in the pasture. I mean, there is shade. There's a shady area. I arranged it so that the platform would be under some trees, but the shade isn't that great and it's not reliable. So you put your shooting mat down in a nice shady place, and then 5 minutes later the sun has come over to visit, and you just fry like an egg. So that's pretty exciting. I hope I can get it done quickly, because I've got a new Ruger precision rifle, and I haven't even managed to sight it in yet. I haven't managed to get the scope sighted. And I haven't really properly sighted in my AR-15. I want to join a local long-range gun range. They've got a place not too far away where you can shoot at 900 yards, but I don't want that to be the only place where I shoot. And I don't want to show up there to sight in my rifle. I don't want to sit there like an idiot putting cartridge after cartridge in the gun, doing something I should have done at home. So I look forward to that. That ought to be great. And I can tell you about something else that's going on. It's really funny. I got banned from a firearms forum. I'll just tell you which one it is. Doesn't matter. It's called the highroad.org. I think it's org. And this is a place that, to me, visiting this place was like a vice, and I'll tell you why. I belong to a whole lot of internet forums. I belong to machining forums, and a woodworking forum, and I've belonged to cooking forums. I belong to political forums. I don't know what I was thinking. Just a huge array of forums I belong to, because forums are really useful. Back in the old days, if you wanted to learn something, you couldn't. If you wanted to learn about something, you had to move to another city or become an apprentice or something. And these days, it's not like that. You go to YouTube University or you join a forum, and you can learn to do just about anything on the internet. So I belong to a lot of forums. And an interesting thing about forums is, depending on the interest of the people in the forum, depending on the kind of forum it is, the forums have different levels of hostility. Okay, so I think the worst forums I ever belonged to probably were political forums. I'm not really sure, because for a brief period, I was hired to work on a book, and the book was about low carb dieting. And I know, looking at me, you're saying, well, you're obviously an expert on that. You're a success. But I needed information on low carbing, and bodybuilders know a lot about this. Bodybuilders are the least healthy people on earth, oddly. They look great, but most of them can't walk up a flight of stairs because they don't do cardio and they don't eat carbs and they're on a lot of drugs. If you're not aware that successful bodybuilders all take drugs, then you're living in a fantasy world and you need to snap out of it. You're not gonna, if you bought yourself, some dumbbells at I was gonna say Sears, but Sears is gone. But if you got yourself some dumbbells and a jump rope and you think you're gonna look like Arnold Schwarzenegger, it's never gonna happen. You got to take drugs. Anyway, they're very unhealthy people. They die when they're 45. That's awful. But they're extremely hostile people. So I joined this bodybuilding forum so I could get information from people who were low carbers. And man, they were just horrible. They had this vile outlook toward life. They were vicious and cruel and nasty to each other. Not just the people off the forum, but they were horrible. And I have belonged to machining forums, and machining forum people, they're not too bad, but you do run into a lot of pedantic people who are rude. And if you ask anything, if you show any kind of opening that suggests that you may not know something they know, then instead of being patient with you, they'll take a really nasty tone. And I got really tired of that. I belonged to one at a site called Chaski.org, Chaski. I belonged there for years, like since 2007 or 2008, I guess. And a lot of people there were almost like friends. I don't make friends on internet forums. This is not where I go to make friends, but there were people I knew and I was familiar with. And I guess they wonder what happened, because one day I just said, I can't do this anymore. It's not like they were terrible. When you get to a certain age, you say to yourself, I'm not going to be talking like to a child anymore. I don't care what the consequences are. Maybe I'll have to figure out how to do this machining operation by myself. Well, that's fine, but I'm not going to be spoken to this way. So I didn't say anything. I just quit. The guy sent me an email, asked me where I was and stuff like that. But anyway, machining forums aren't that bad, but they're kind of bad. I belong to a woodworking forum called sawmillcreek.org. They're pretty good. They're not terrible, but they do have a weird obsession with expensive tools. So if you go there and you say things like, I'm thinking of buying a handsaw, they'll say, well, you could get by if you buy a Lee Nielsen saw, which retails for $9,000. Well, not $9,000, but they're probably cost. I'll bet the cheapest saw that company makes is like $450. I don't know. Lee Nielsen. The name Lee Nielsen is two words. It's Lee and Nielsen with a hyphen. And Lee is spelled L-I-E and pronounced Lee, so that tells you right away it's very pretentious. And they make their tools somewhere in the United States where you can't make tools profitably. So they charge a great deal of money, and they make hand planes and whatever. So they make really, really nice tools. And guys who participate in woodworking forums typically are not professionals. Usually they're hobbyists, and hobbyists get some dumb ideas about stuff. Hobbyists will think if you want to cook, you have to have a $300 knife. And they'll think if you want to do woodworking, you got to have a $400 handsaw, which is insanity, because look around your house. I mean, imagine, I'm sure some people watching this video, out of the 17 people that watch, somebody in the group has a piece of furniture that's more than 50 years old. And if you do, well, that piece of furniture was made with tools that were not expensive. It was made with like Stanley hand planes you can get used on eBay for $50. And which work very, very well. They do perfect work if you know what you're doing. So the people on the forum aren't too bad, but they will tend to push tools you don't really need. So you can, a tool investment that ought to be $5,000 to set up a nice shop would turn into $80,000 if you listen to them. Gun forums, fishing forums are terrible. Fishermen are jerks. I don't know why this is. My dad used to have a big boat. He had a 46-foot header shot. And we used to fish on it all the time. We used to go to the Bahamas. We catch dolphin off Miami. Not mahi-mahi. Dolphin is the proper term in English. And I'll just tell you, fishermen are the most obnoxious people on earth. I don't know why that is. And they're very conceited. Like you're putting a line in the water and you're pulling an animal that's about as smart as a tadpole out. Why are you conceited? Why are you conceited about that? You're spending $1 million on a boat to catch a fish that has meat worth $8.95. I don't get it. But they're very conceited, they're very obnoxious, they're very competitive. When they see you catching fish off Miami, they barge in and try to take the fish. They cut across each other and when they're trolling, and just a rude bunch of people, nasty. And anyway, gun forums are a lot like fishing forums. They're a lot of rude people, just very insecure. It's the kind of people who put on camo to go to bed, or to shoot at target. Like I always say, they go to the gun range wearing camo to shoot at targets that can't see them. So it's a bunch of guys. They think owning, a snub-nosed 38 makes them Rambo, and they're more masculine than you are, and they know more about self-defense and firearms than you do. They're a better shot. They're tougher. They could beat you up if they met you. They're super patriotic, and you're a leftist pansy, even if you voted for Donald Trump. So they're just rude. And moderators on these forums, moderators on any forum, tend to be pretty bad. There was a famous experiment where volunteers were taken and they're put into this simulated prison, and some were told they were guards and others were told they were prisoners. And within a very short time, the ones that were made guards supposedly became very abusive and obnoxious. It's just human nature. And that's what happens on internet forums. And when you're on a forum where everybody's obnoxious already, it's worse. So there's some really obnoxious moderators at thehighroad.org. Just really silly people. Well, as a participant on this forum, I tried not to go there too much because I knew they were annoying, and I didn't want to be a person who had anger in me all the time. Christians are supposed to be people of love. So what does the Bible say? When Jesus prayed the Lord's Prayer, he said, "Lead us not into temptation." Well, provocation is a type of temptation. If someone tries to make you angry so you do something stupid, or so you'll just be angry and unforgiving, which is damaging to you, that's provocation. That's temptation. So I tried to avoid this forum. There's a couple of other forums that weren't that bad, gun forums that were less bad. And whenever I went to this forum, I think to myself, do I feel like ignoring abuse today? Do I feel that it's okay for me to go to this place and risk being insulted and belittled by ignorant people who had no manners and no upbringing? Or should I just refrain from doing this? So I really limited the amount of participation that I put in. Well, the other day I did something. I said, what the heck? And I went and I posted a message about Massad Ayoob, who is a gun writer. He has a lot of videos on YouTube. I think other people put them up. I don't know if they have his permission or not all the time, but Massad Ayoob is supposedly an expert on tactics and self-defense. He's an expert on using firearms to defend yourself, and he's written books about this stuff. But he's in his mid-70s. Okay, so he was born in 1948, and he's not alone anymore. There's many people doing what he does now, and many of them are better qualified. So he's done a lot of really good work, but he's getting up in years, and he kind of has a tendency to wander off the reservation and talk about things he doesn't know much about. And I can give you an example of that. I'll tell you what I know about his credentials. I can't find any evidence that he has a college degree. Now, maybe he does, but this guy promotes himself heavily, and he talks about his credentials a lot. When you look up his credentials, you don't see anything in there about a college degree. And I can tell you for a fact that he's not a lawyer. So if he doesn't have a college degree, he can't really be a ballistician because that involves math and science. He can't be a wound expert because that requires a medical degree. He can't be an engineer who designs firearms. That takes an education. So he's a gun writer. That's what he does. As far as I can tell, he never says he's been in the military, as far as I can find. Never says he's participated in any type of armed confrontation, not once in his life. He says that he was a police officer in a town called Grantham, New Hampshire. He was part-time. Okay, give me a second. I got to turn off the stove beeper. To get back to my story, Grantham, New Hampshire, I looked it up. Grantham, New Hampshire currently has a population of 2,910, if I get the number correctly. And when he was there, it would have been less than that. It used to have a population of 2,000. And to give you an idea what that means, my aunt and uncle lived in a town that size, and it had 2 stoplights. and they were about 2 miles apart. So that's the kind of place where he did this work. And to give you an idea of what his mindset might be, what kind of person he might be, I'll say that he worked for several years, or maybe I've read 14 years. I don't know exactly how many. He worked as a part-time cop, which is almost like a hobby position in most places. And he says he retired, or someone else says he retired. That's the word they use. He retired as a captain. Well, I looked this place up, as I said, and the police department has 5 officers. And there's 2 people above the officers. So that's it. No one in a town of 2,000 people says, I'm a captain or a major or a general or whatever, you know. You just don't do that. I mean, if people did that in the town where my aunt still lives, I mean, the funny stories would never stop. So it amazed me that he would call himself a captain. And in fairness to him, he says that he doesn't rely on his police experience when he does his work. And that's understandable, because in a place like that, what are you going to be doing? You're going to be, the cops are basically going to be like the homeowners association in a town that small. You're going to be writing parking tickets. You're going to be telling people, you know, get their bicycles off the sidewalk. I mean, that's going to be a tough day. It's like Mayberry. So his credentials are pretty limited. Now, I, on the other hand, am an attorney. I'm a real attorney, graduated cum laude. It's a funny story how that happened. I didn't work much in law school. I worked pretty hard the first semester. And after that, I realized you can work really hard all semester and get an A, or you can do virtually nothing and have a great time. And then you can work hard for 3 days at the end of the semester, and then you get a B. And then when you get out, you get the same degree. So I chose the latter course. And one day a friend of mine came up to me and he said, hey, congratulations on the cum laude. And I said, what are you talking about? I had no idea. So cum laude is not that big a deal. Going to law school is not that big a deal. My evidence professor, Mickey Graham, a funny guy, smart guy, he was very smart, and most lawyers really aren't that smart. You need an IQ of about 110 to be competent in law. He loved to say, you guys are smarter than the average bear. And what he meant by that was, you're not that smart. And it's true. Nonetheless, I am a lawyer, and there's a reason why people go to law school. It's impossible to convince people who aren't lawyers of this. They all think, I've seen Law and Order, I've seen Matlock, I got this. And it's just the farthest possible thing from the truth. If you try to represent yourself, or you try to represent another person, you are swimming in the deep end, and you have no water wings. Things are going to go wrong that you can't foresee because you just don't know what you're doing. And there's also a problem if you're not really that sharp. If you're not terribly sharp, you know, if your intelligence is below a certain threshold, you're not going to see the things that a good lawyer will see. And you're going to, and you know, I don't want to pick on Mr. Ayoob, but I've read things he's written. I read his analysis of the Zimmerman case, which was a very, very simple case of self-defense, had nothing to do with stand your ground, nothing to do with the Castle Doctrine. And I saw his analysis of the case, and it was like something a kid in 6th grade would write. He missed every important point. It was just, he just doesn't have the tools to practice law, to interpret cases in an intelligent way. Nonetheless, he holds himself out as someone who's competent to teach about the law. He put out this video, and he was advising people on what they should tell the police after they shot someone. Well, that's legal advice. Now, some people would say, oh, it's not legal advice, you're not in a court. Well, if you're saying that, it's because you're not a lawyer, you have no idea what you're talking about. Anytime you give somebody advice that's to keep them out of legal trouble, it's legal advice. That's pretty much the definition of legal advice. So he did this video, and he said, you should tell the cops this, you should tell the cops that. And I'm looking at this thing, you know, my jaw's on my chest, and I'm thinking, this guy's ego, it's like a tumor. I mean, somebody needs to lance it. It's out of control. You can't do this. He supposedly hangs out with a defense lawyer named Branca, and they say that this Branca guy knows what he's doing. I don't know if that's true or not. I mean, if you want to be an expert attorney who gets a lot of public attention, I'll tell you how you do it. You call TV stations, you call radio stations, you call people who run websites, and you offer to speak or write or talk or whatever. And immediately people say, oh, this guy's a genius. He's been on the Wall Street Journal. He's been on Fox News. My sister used to appear as a legal expert on Fox and CNN and so forth. And she was a terrible lawyer. She got fired from. Well, I shouldn't say she got fired, but I'll say an understanding was reached, and she was no longer employed at the state's attorney's office where she worked, which is not something usually that happens when things are going well. And how did she do this? Well, she paid a lady named Terry, a publicist, and Terry called people at Fox and CNN or whatever and said, hey, this lady's willing to talk. So if you're wondering where those people come from that you think are so brilliant on the news, that's where they come from. It's just people who don't have much to do, and they want to increase their profile and get business because of it, and they volunteer. People who produce TV news shows and people who have websites and so forth, they're always looking for content. They need help. So I'll tell you what, if you want to have some fun, call up the networks and tell them, I don't know, tell them you're a patent lawyer and you want to talk about patents or whatever it is you want to talk about. Say you're a lawyer. And I guarantee you, if you do this for like a month, somebody will bring you in to talk about something. So I don't know whether this Bronco guy's any good or not. He may be a genius. But supposedly he tells people they should talk to the police after a shooting, and there's certain things they should say to set themselves up. And, that's fine. I'm going to say this. Maybe he's right, because I'm not going to give you legal advice. Do whatever you think is right after a shooting. But what he says is a contrarian viewpoint. Most lawyers will tell you, do not say one word to the police, except things like, I respectfully choose to talk to a lawyer before we communicate. There's a reason why we have Miranda readings now. It's very important. My dad did some criminal defense when he was young, and he decided to move on to something profitable. But he defended 11 murders and got 10 of them off. And the last one was convicted apparently because of jury misconduct. So he was a phenomenal lawyer. And what he said was 85% of people who are in prison got there because they talked to the police. Now, I don't know where he got that statistic or whether it's still current. But it's a very big deal when you talk to the police. Prisons are full of people who talk themselves into it. And you may say, well, it's okay to talk to the police if you're innocent. Well, no, it's not. It's really not. And I'll tell you why. First of all, you don't know if you're innocent or not. I know it's a hard thing to say to people. You really don't know whether you're innocent or not when you shoot somebody. I mean, there's cases where, yeah, you're definitely innocent. You wake up and there's somebody leaning over you in bed with a knife and you pull your gun out from under the covers and shoot them. Yeah, okay, you're innocent. But that's a tiny percentage of cases. A lot of the time, there's going to be a doubt, or I hate to say this, good people commit murder all the time because they don't understand the law. It's hard to, and even if they did, it's hard to make a good decision when you're afraid. So you don't know whether you're innocent or not. You may be telling the cops things that you think prove that you're innocent, and in reality, you're just driving the nails into your coffin. That's one thing. And the other thing is cops lie constantly. Cops are human beings. They lie, they plant evidence. You don't believe me? Go on the internet and look. You can find videos of cops who have been convicted for planting evidence. You can say, I shot my assailant because he ran out of the liquor store with a machete and said he was going to cut my head off. But what if you're white and he's Mexican and the cop is Mexican? The cop may write down, the suspect said, I shot him because I hate Mexicans and I feel like we really need to get him out of our country by any means possible. That's an exaggeration, but cops make things up all the time. So, and I'm not trying to pick on Mexicans. I mean, what if you're Mexican and you shot a white guy and the cop is white? You know what I'm saying? So, cops make stuff up. You don't know what he's going to say, and how are you going to prove it? So here's a murderer, an accused murderer, and he says one thing, and this upstanding pillar of the community, this police officer, who has a nice uniform and offers his life every day to defend us, he says something else. Who are you going to believe? The murderer? So what I'm trying to tell you is the advice he gave is not consistent with the advice most lawyers will give you. It's the complete opposite of the advice they gave me when I was in law school. And I did do some criminal work. I mean, I took, criminal procedure class, and I belonged to the Criminal Law Society. And when I did my clinical stuff, I did it with the public defender in Miami and also with legal aid, and I worked with a domestic violence prosecutor. So I'm not a criminal law expert, but I know a little bit about it. And I'm just telling you, the general rule is lawyers will tell you, talk to me first, because you can't help yourself. Now, again, I'm not giving you legal advice. I'm telling you what lawyers say. I'm not telling you what you should do. Here's what I think you should do. If you want my advice is get a lawyer. That's the advice they always tell us. In law school, they say if somebody asks you a question, they want free legal advice, tell them get a lawyer. That's the only safe thing I can say to protect myself and also you, unless I want to take your case on, and I don't want to take on a criminal case. So he gave this advice which was really out of line with the majority. And the thing is, that's not really the bad thing. The bad thing is he gave this advice even though he could not understand it. He couldn't understand the case law. He couldn't understand the way courts work. There's a reason why the unauthorized practice of law is a crime, not a misdemeanor, but a felony in every state in the union. It's because this stuff is dangerous. And if you say something stupid to the police, you can't raise your hand and say, well, Massad Ayoob told me to say that. I want to do over. It doesn't work that way. You're done. So I wrote about this on this internet forum, and boy, these laymen just can't, oh, Massad Ayoob is so wonderful. He's written all these books, and we light candles in his name, and we adore him, and our children are named after him. And these were people that, farmers, mechanics, great people, I'm sure, but not lawyers. And again, it seems like everybody who doesn't know anything about the law feels like they're entitled to argue with lawyers. So I got nowhere with that. But anyway, the next day I got up, and I knew that some people on this forum knew Massad Ayoob personally, and he was a member there, and I thought, maybe this is going to ruffle some feathers. Well, the next day I got up, and there was a private message for me, and what this means is there's a little forum within a forum. There's a little area where you go where no one else can see, and other people can talk to you there, and it's just like a forum, except there's a limited number of people and no one else can see it. So a bunch of people who are moderators on the forum had been invited to this thing. It was like a jury had been convened over nothing. They don't do this ordinarily. If I put up a video and I say something stupid, imagine that happening, and someone goes to this forum or any other forum and says, boy, this guy's stupid, look what he said. They're not going to get called in by the moderators. No one cares. So what happened was very special treatment. It's as though Massad Ayoob were some kind of invalid and I were attacking him with a bat, and he was not able to defend himself, even though he clearly, is a grown man and can do whatever he wants. So they started lecturing me. Like, there's this guy who's a moderator there, and he's an insurance lawyer. I don't have a high opinion of insurance lawyers who work for companies, but my grandfather got rich beating them. My father always told me, insurance companies don't hire the best and they don't hire the worst. They hire somebody in the middle of the road because they don't want to lose every case, but on the other hand, it's not cost effective to pay really good lawyers. So I don't have a really high opinion of insurance company lawyers. A lot of what I have since the death of my grandfather came from insurance companies indirectly. So they started lecturing me, telling me I was wrong, and they were saying, Massad Ayoob is an expert witness and he works in continuing legal education. And they had no idea what they were talking about. An expert witness isn't a lawyer. An expert witness can only talk about facts in court. And you don't have to be a genius to be an expert witness. You can be somebody who's really good at raising goldfish, and you can be an expert witness on goldfish. You just have to have some knowledge that other people don't have. The general public generally doesn't have. So, you could be a chef, you could be a gardener. There's a lot of them are accountants. A lot of them are, they estimate damages and so forth. And lawyers only hire expert witnesses they know will say what they want. Laymen may not be aware of this. There are defense experts and there are plaintiff experts, and everybody knows who they are. And when you talk to an expert about your case, you want to make sure before you pay him a gigantic amount of money that he's going to say something that helps your client. And for this reason, Mickey Graham, my evidence professor, called them witnesses having other reasonable explanations, WHORE. I'm not saying that this is what the kind of person Massad Ayoob is. I'm sure he's totally honest. But I'm just telling you the kind of business he works in. What you do is you call your expert, and if it's somebody you used before, he's going to say whatever you want. But if it's somebody that you haven't used before, you talk to them and you say this happened and that happened, and the expert, they won't say things like, oh, let's lie to the judge. They never say anything like that. What they'll say things is like, gosh, if your defendant, if your client, if this happened to him, that would be really good because it would mean this, and that would help him. And you'll say to yourself, you'll say to him, yeah, that would be really good. That would be really neat. Like say you have a DUI, you're drunk out of your mind, you plow into a house or something, and you got a little abrasion on your head from hitting the steering wheel. This is something they actually do. Your DUI attorney or DWI attorney will get a doctor to say that you were addled. So you hit the steering wheel and your mind is scrambled and you refuse to take a sobriety test because you kind of have to be an idiot to take a sobriety test when you're drunk. And that's not legal advice, that's my opinion. Please take your sobriety test or don't. Do whatever you think is right. Anyway, they'll say, oh, he was addled. I think, and the expert will say, I think if I give him a magnetic resonance imaging scan for, let's say $25,000, it'll probably show that he has a concussion and he couldn't think clearly. And the lawyer will say, gee, do you think that's true? I think that's probably a good idea. That sounds completely reasonable to me. So the next thing you know, you've got this image and you've got proof that you're addled. You got a doctor on the stand, somebody who's licensed by your state, and he's saying he wasn't drunk. He was out of his mind, and you should have gotten a medical treatment instead of throwing him in the back of a cruiser like a Nazi. So that's what the expert business is about. And of course, the people on the other side, the prosecutors will have an expert who will, may or may not tell the truth. They'll say pretty much whatever the prosecutors want, if the prosecutors get their way. Of course, I'm not saying they're all dishonest, but it's kind of the way the law works. A lot of the law works on rationalization. You don't really say that you're doing anything dishonest. You try to construct an imaginary world in which what you're doing is right, and then you stick with that illusion. So expert witnesses are not lawyers. They're not qualified to talk about the law. If they talk about the law on the witness stand, it'll be excluded by any judge who has any brains. Nobody wants to hear that nonsense from some guy who doesn't know anything about the law. And you can say, well, he's been in courtrooms a lot as an expert witness, so he must know a lot. Well, who's been in the court more than anybody? The stenographer, or maybe the clerk. Do you want these people to represent you in the court of law because they sat there waiting for the minute where they can get up and have their next donut? It's just, I can't explain to you how wrong it is to say that an expert witness is somehow qualified to teach anything about the law. So anyway, when these people called me in, I put out, they said these things that were ridiculous, and I proved them absolutely, utterly wrong. And I said, it's your website, do whatever you want. I don't want to make trouble, but I'm not going to sit here and say you're right when you're wrong. Of course you're wrong. And I said they were giving Ayoob special treatment, and I said, you ought to ask yourself, why are you having, I called it a star chamber. A star chamber is a special secret court, in case you don't know that. And because I didn't think they knew what a star chamber was, I said it's like a FISA court. You ought to know what that is. And I said, why are you doing this? Why are you having this secret message FISA court if you're not giving this guy special treatment? Nobody else gets this. And so the thing that made him angry, I think the things that really made him angry probably were like, number one, I told him what I thought of insurance company lawyers. And I was polite about it, but I wasn't flattering. And I said everything they were telling me was wrong. And I said they were giving special treatment to Massad Ayoob, which is basically the same thing as saying they were not being fair to me, which was true. But I said, do whatever you want. It's your website. And I said, there's somebody else who has a website, and he'll do whatever I want. I'll just, that's where my views will appear from now on. And of course, that's true because I have a website, and I'm not going to censor myself. So I thought to myself, I wonder if they're going to delete the thread, because that seems like the kind of thing that people like this would do. And the first thing you know, I went to the site, and there's this little alert, and my thread had been deleted for rules violations. Well, no warning, no explanation, just rules violations. And of course, I never violated the rules. Okay, so deleted. Not a problem, who cares? I put up a few posts about other things, had absolutely zero reference to this business. And then I was thinking, why don't they just go ahead and delete me? This is the kind of person who would delete someone, because this is the kind of corruption that you would expect from a small person. So got up this morning, and I had been deleted. I had been banned. So now I'm banned from the high road. And I looked at the high road without logging in, and it still says member next to my name. So I guess people think that I'm just too snooty to talk to them now, because I can't respond to them. And they didn't even unsubscribe me from their emails and stuff. So I kept getting emails, this person has responded, that person has responded. And I sent them a message through their website. And I said, because one of your gutless moderators has banned me without warning, which is, that's fine. But I said, I'm still getting these messages, and you need to stop. You need to unsubscribe me or do whatever you have to do. And I think it would also be appropriate if you put banned beside my name, so people don't think I just decided never to talk anymore. And I don't know what I'm going to hear back from about that. And I get, well, you know what? I'm not going to hear anything back from, because I thought about it and I thought these guys are going to want to argue. So what I did was I fixed my email so that anything that comes from them is marked red and then deleted, so I'll never see it. Because what's the point? So why am I telling you this? It's really interesting to me, because it's a wonderful confirmation about what human nature is like and what corruption is like. I fully expected this to happen. When I put this thing up yesterday, I thought, well, I wonder if this is going to get me banned. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. And the other thing is, I belong to another website which is somewhat related to the High Road, and it's a somewhat more polite website, but I use the same username. So and one of the guys, probably the guy who banned me, I'm guessing, because he has probably the insurance lawyer, I don't know. But anyway, he's a moderator over there too. So I did put up a message on that site saying, hey, I may get banned soon because of this thing that happened. So I just want everybody to know I appreciate all the advice you give me. I said something to that effect. So I'm kind of expecting to be banned from that site too. But it's amazing how corrupt people are, and how small-minded they can be. But the neat thing about it is, I have a lot of peace about it, because this is a place that I visited and I thought it was a vice. I used to ask God whenever I went in, should I go to this place? Should I even involve myself with these people? And I felt like when it was okay, I would go. When he didn't say it was okay, I wouldn't go. And I had this experience in 2015 that I called the Little Rapture. I was on Facebook all the time, and I was on Twitter and Instagram. And most of the people I talked to were Christians I knew from church. And there were young people, uneducated people, people who didn't know anything, didn't have any prayer life, total hypocrites, smoked weed, lived with their girlfriends, And I would try to help these people, and I would say this or that. Or I would say, you need to look out for this minister or that minister. Stay away from Joel Osteen. He's all about money, which is true. Or I'd say, stay away from this doctrine. It's bad. Do this instead. It's so wonderful. God is so great. And these kids and young people and uneducated people and people who didn't pray would argue with me, and they were so disrespectful and so impudent. So one day I woke up and I felt like God was saying, you know what, get rid of this stuff. You talk to these people and then they won't listen. Shake the dust off your feet and get out. So I felt I should obey God, and I thought this is going to be great. And I got rid of these things, and I never went back. That's not exactly true. I went back briefly for certain purposes, but I don't have any of those accounts now. And I always pray to God. I say, lead us not into temptation. I pray for myself and a certain group of people that I know, and I say, don't lead us into temptation, please. Help us to be free of temptation and provocation, because provocation is a type of temptation. And I thought about that when I had this incident with the High Road. I thought, God is really looking out for me. I put this thing up that I knew was likely to cause trouble, and sure enough, exactly what I thought was going to happen happened. And now I don't have to ask myself, is it okay to go to this website or is it not okay? Because I don't have a membership anymore. Now, of course, I could do, I could start a new account right now under a different name, and they would have no idea. I could do that every day, and I could have 5,000 accounts, and they would say, gosh, we're doing great, because look at all these people. Look at all the wonderful animated conversations they have, and it would just be me. But I don't intend to do that. So it's nice to have this aggravation out of my life, and it's really like the rapture. The rapture is not just about people being mean to each other and sinning and fighting in wars and stuff like that. It's about people who won't listen. It's about people who don't listen to God and who aren't honest with themselves and who are corrupt and reject good advice. I was giving these people wonderful advice, both in the forum, I wrote about Massad Ayoob, and when I was writing on social media about Christianity and about the bad doctrines and the bad ministers that cause a lot of trouble. And it wasn't just the people disagreed with me, but they treated me very disrespectfully. They didn't acknowledge any of my qualifications. Unlike Massad Ayoob, I have some qualifications. And there's something about that disrespect, that impudence that God really doesn't like. Hell, I always tell people, hell is not full of bad, mean people. It's full of people who don't listen. God really does not like impudence and disrespect. You remember when I think it was Elisha there were kids who came out and made fun of him, and God sent bears to maul them. And there was a law in the Old Testament that said if your son was a little jerk, you could take him to the city gate and have him stoned to death, because no parent should have to put up with that. So God really doesn't like disrespect. He doesn't like people that don't know anything or who are young and have no disrespect for their elders, or for people that are smart or people that are accomplished. When you mistreat people who are in positions like that, it's like the way we mistreat God when we don't honor him and don't obey him. So yeah, it was a good thing. It's a very good thing to be free of this place. And I'm not going to lie, I got annoyed. I really did get annoyed. You can tell, I think, from what I'm saying now, that sometimes I'm still a little irritated about it. But still, I'm really glad it happened, because I'm glad I'm not involved with that mess anymore. The rapture is a real thing, and it's going to be really, really beautiful. You may not understand this if you haven't shared the experiences that I've had, but I used to live in Miami, which is a horrible place where people are at each other's throats all the time, and the people are just really trashy and arrogant. They just have a ghetto mindset about everything. It's just a terrible place to live. And God moved me to this wonderful place where there's Christians and conservatives, and everybody's polite, everybody holds the door. It's just a spectacular place to live. And he got me detached from the social media nonsense, and there's people that I've ejected from my life that I just don't want anything to do with. And if you haven't done it yet, you don't understand what it's like. You don't understand how wonderful it is to wake up and know you're not going to have to deal with a single person that day who mistreats you. In heaven, everyone loves each other, and there's no disagreement. People love to talk about healthy debate. There's no such thing as healthy debate. Debate is something that exists because of sin and the curse on our planet. God tells everyone the exact same things. He never tells one person this is true and another person that is true so they can argue, unless there's some kind of curse going on. In heaven, everyone agrees with each other, and everyone you know there, you have a deeper love and a deeper trust for them, more warmth for them than you have for anyone on this planet. Your husband, your wife, your children, your parents, everyone there. Who knows how many millions or trillions of people are in heaven? I have no idea. I have no idea how many, whether there have been other worlds before this one, or whether it's just the people from this world that are there. But there's a huge, gigantic number of people in heaven, and everyone there will be in 100% agreement with you all the time, and they will treat you with love and respect and honor. And that's what we have to look forward to. So it's great to get a little taste of that now. And if there are people in your life that make you miserable and belittle you and so on, just scrape them off. You don't need them. Maybe they supply something in your life that you think is important. Ask yourself, is it really important? Do I really need to go to a gun forum where people are nasty to me? Do I need to go to a fishing forum and ask for advice on tying a knot when I know somebody is going to insult me? It's better not to put up with that. The Bible says it's better to live in the corner of a rooftop than in a wide house with a brawling woman. And these people are like brawling women. So that's my story. I suggest if you have any kind of legal questions, hire a lawyer. Don't listen to some guy who writes for magazines on the internet. And don't listen to lawyers on the internet. Don't say, I watched a video that a lawyer gave me. Unless that lawyer says, hire a lawyer when you're in trouble, don't listen to him. You need a lawyer. That's the correct answer all the time when you're in trouble. You need a lawyer. Get a lawyer before you get yourself in trouble that you can't even predict because you don't know what you're doing. And as for Massad Ayoob, I hope he prospers and does well. But he's got to do something about that pride. I mean, I saw him get into it with this wound expert. I hope I didn't mention this already in this video. There's this guy named Martin Fackler who's a doctor, and he was over, I believe it's the Army, maybe it's the whole armed forces, but I believe it's the Army. He was over their gun wound laboratory. Tremendous resources, greatest expert imaginable on bullet wounds. And Ayoob got into a big argument with him on the internet about wounds. And I'm thinking, man, it's like Dirty Harry said, you got to know your limitations. And it just doesn't seem like he has any idea what his are. Well, that's all I got to say. Sorry I talked so long, but it could have been worse. Oh, by the way, somebody in one of my comments refers to me as Mr. What is it he calls me? Mr. E. Babylon. I don't know what the E stands for because I talk so much and my videos are so long. Sorry about that. I make these videos to make myself happy, not you. I hope what I teach you about Christianity, well, I shouldn't say teach because that's arrogant, but what I tell you that I've learned about Christianity through making mistake after mistake after mistake, I hope that stuff is useful to you, and that'd be great. And it's nice if you enjoy my videos, but I make them to make myself happy. And if I feel like talking for 3 hours, that's exactly what I'm going to do. And I'm probably never going to make good videos. So don't watch, don't subscribe, don't care. Have a great day.